Hey guys, this is Gene Jensen with BassResource.com. Let's talk about fishing line. I've gotten a lot of questions about it lately, so I grabbed the 4 major types of line that I use and threw them up on my desk, and I'm just going to go through the different characteristics of the line and a few extra things about them. Let's start off with monofilament. Monofilament is perfect for beginners and perfect for those who are on a tight budget. I still use monofilament. I love monofilament, especially when I'm on a tight budget. I'm broke right now, so if I had to go buy line, I'd end up having to go buy either Strand or Trilene Big Game is one of my favorite monofilaments because it's inexpensive. But the characteristics of monofilament is it has a lot of stretch. So the reason I say it's perfect for beginners is because it's a lot more forgiving when you're fighting a fish. That fish lunges and moves and does all kinds of other stuff, and that stretch keeps tension in your line and keeps the hook in the fish. You lose that tension, you lose the fish. So that's perfect for this. It's pretty abrasion resistant. It's easy to tie knots on. It doesn't tend to weaken when you pull the line knot tight. Some of it's got decent memory. Let me explain to you what memory is. Memory is how a line remembers the shape of the spool that it was on, or the size and the shape of the spool was on. Look, I'm going to take this off of this reel, and you see, or the spool, and you see how it's twisted, and it's twisted the same size as the spool. So this line has memory, not a lot of it, and all plastic line is going to have memory. What I have found is that some brands have more than others, and the more memory you have, the worse off it is. The less memory you have, it tends to be better, but just understand that with plastic lines, you're going to have memory, and you kind of have to get used to it. Most light, 12, 10 on down pound test monofilament has decent memory, and you're usually pretty good fishing it. Types of lures I use monofilament on right now because I love fluorocarbon, I love braid, things like that. I use monofilament on my Carolina rigs. I use copolymer on my Carolina rigs. We'll talk about that later. I use it on top water, anything that needs to be up in the water column, because monofilament floats. It's perfect for top water. If you're going to throw top water frogs and poppers and walking baits and things like that, monofilament's not a bad thing. One thing to remember with monofilament, though, is when you make a long cast, say with a Carolina rig, you make a real long cast and you get a bite on the end of that long cast, you've got a lot of stretch to pick up on that hook set. So you reel way down, point your rod at your fish, and you just rear back on them really, really far until you feel the stretch come out of that line, and you drive that hook home. A lot of times it's pretty difficult, and that's something you have to kind of figure it out on your own, how far you got to do that. But just understand the amount of stretch that monofilament has. And it's not like a rubber band or anything else, but it does have a lot more stretch than some of these other lines. I'd put it on any type of a reel, a bait caster, a spinning reel, even one of those dumb little push button reels that I can't stand. Now, the next one's going to be fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is kind of at the other end of the spectrum when it comes to cost. It's about $20 a spool as opposed to $5, $6 a spool here. And there's less of it on there. But anyway, 100% fluorocarbon has low stretch. So you can drive a hook home on a long hook set and a short hook set and everything else. It has a lot more, it's a lot more sensitive because there's a lot less stretch. This doesn't have a whole lot of sensitivity. It's something you just get used to. But the sensitivity is a lot greater with this. It's fairly abrasion resistant. There's some brands out there that aren't, that it rubs up against a rock, you get a little curls on the edge, on the outside of the line, things like that. You just kind of have to figure it out. I love Seagar. That's what I've used. It's what I caught my personal best on. Matter of fact, 8-pound test was what I caught my 10-pound or 9.9 8-pound bass on. Now with knots, you really have to be careful tying knots with a fluorocarbon, because when it rubs up against itself, it tends to, especially when you're tying a knot, it tends to make itself weak. So what you do is you tie your knot, you spit on it, get it good and lubricated, and then slowly and steadily pull your line tight. I use a improved clinch knot on my fluorocarbon. A lot of people will say, well, that's not a good knot for it. Well, it is if you tie it right, and it is if you tie it carefully. The reason I use an improved clinch knot is because it's easy to tie and it's got great knot strength when it's tied right. Most people will say, you know, there are other great knots out there for perfect for fluorocarbon and things like that. That's awesome. They take 5 minutes to tie. I don't have time for that. I want to get back out and go fishing. I would put this, I'd put 4, 6, and 8, anything 8 pounds and less on a spinning reel because of the memory that has that fluorocarbon has. It tends to have a lot more memory than monofilament or copolymer. So I would I'd put lighter line on a spinning rod, and I would put heavier line on a bait caster. I use 20-pound test on a jig rod, but you know I still haven't seen an advantage of it because the bigger the line, the less invisible it is. So I use it on my crankbaits because it helps get my crankbaits just a little bit deeper because it is a sinking line. I use it on shaky heads and drop shots and any kind of Texas rigging and things like that. I'll use fluorocarbon, or I'll use what's called copolymer. Now copolymer is a combination of monofilament and fluorocarbon. What it is a monofilament core that's been coated with fluorocarbon. It's got less stretch than monofilament and a little bit more stretch than fluorocarbon. It's got great abrasion resistance. It ties knots easy. It's got medium memory. It's got less memory than what fluorocarbon does. And it goes on any reel. This is a Line XXX. It's what I use 99% of the time. I buy it in the bulk spool because I use it so much. Another good copolymer is P-Line. Now, let me think. The reels or the lures I use it on, I use 10-pound test on my crankbait rod, the crankbaits. Most of my Texas rigging I'll use it on. Just about anything. I'm not scared to use this on anything except for my heavy frog rod. When I'm fishing like a heavy frog rod, I go to Braided Line. Now, Braided Line is perfect, like I said, for frog fishing when you're fishing in the slop and you really have to winch a fish out of there. The reason I like Braided Line for frog fishing and for thick jig and Texas rig, and I'm pitching when I'm flipping into heavy covered Texas rig, is that it has no stretch. So when you set that hook, it turns the fish. It has a very good abrasion resistance, so you can get down into that thick stuff and get the fish out without breaking your line because it's being rubbed on something. The only knot that I would use to tie it on is a Palomar knot. It hasn't failed me yet, and so people will say, oh, there's other great knots for braid. Yes, there is, but a Palomar knot hasn't failed me yet. And I remember when Braided Line first came out, it was what's it called, spider wire, and it couldn't hold a knot for nothing. You had to put super glue on the knot to be able to keep a knot on there. Well, not anymore. They've done a lot of things to it and make it a lot better. The reels I'd put it on is a bait caster and a spinning reel. The advantages to putting this on a spinning reel is that it is low diameter, it has no memory, and so it doesn't get the line twist that you normally would get with a plastic line. It's great on spinning reels if you want to tie a leader on there of fluorocarbon and stuff like that. Great on spinning reels. It's what I guide with on spinning reels. Let me think, what else? Did I do it again? I did it again. What else? So the line you choose really depends mainly on personal preference. As you get out there and as you start to get more and more experienced with bass fishing, you'll try out some of these lines, figure out which ones you like. It's taken me years to get boiled down to just a few lines. This one, fluorocarbon and braid on one rod. And I changed that up a lot. I've tried probably 8 different types of line in the last year just to see if I'm missing something. And that's just me. But for those of you who are on a budget, stick with monofilament. Save yourself some money and go buy you some lures or a rod or something like that. Because monofilament will work just fine. I don't care about all the bad press that it gets. Monofilament is dang good for those who are just beginning and who don't have a whole lot of money. Like I always say, visit bassresource.com for the answer to all your questions about bass fishing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click that like button. Go check out my Facebook page, and have a great day.